Chapter 7, Part 2. 10th to 11th October 2021. SANSOL to LOGRONO. Change ability. Sustained change, constant change, variable change, dynamic change, shifting change, time-based change, probable and statistic changes, possible changes, changes of free will, motivating change, and combined change. Then our feet can be felt, and we are further and further away from the reality that we know at home. A joint video chat with all the children again gets the blood boiling and reminds one of the great vulnerability we have with us in the course of life, and the tears are once again welling up. Not that we are sad about anything, but it is touching to love so deeply that it hurts. Everything in our family life has changed over the last 6 months. This is also the case in our business world. Completely implemented everywhere, everything has changed. Some of the changes we have chosen ourselves, others are predetermined by the course of life. Some have been in the making for a long time, and some were unavoidable. They just lacked the final decision. Our big girl has traveled to South America. The next in the pack has just turned 18. The third is slowly entering the pre-teenage age, and the youngest is totally gaining a very fine consciousness of herself and the world, and gradually she puts very fine words to everything, day by day. Rasmus finally made the inevitable decision to drop the company and recognize that it was a stumbling block for him, that the money would come from a sale where he was required to go with the company for some time and wouldn't benefit him, but separate him from all the new changes and new upcoming things, and would have a negative and opposite effect. Ancient Academy was launched before we left and is with me here. A new contract is brewing where from January we have a whole new life ahead of us. We are here right now and have taken the time to feel, see, put the dots required after all the different forms of change that have unfolded, and those we are going through. Today, my life's work is launched online, the one that I've spent night and day doing as a single mother of 2 children, as an entrepreneur and maximum at work for many years. It's also a huge change, that everything quietly comes out in the daylight, and I have to get out of my little nerd cave. I am touched, and I can feel all my emotions at once. It was a period in my life when I shut them down in order to survive in the hustle and bustle, and to keep my nose straight in the track and not lose track. A huge mistake and the wrong change, because I have made so many mistakes in that time and missed all my emotions. And yes, I've achieved my goals, and I do not believe in mistakes, but learnings. So I had to learn to understand what it means to live without the emotions, or not to have very many of them available. We cannot avoid the changes which appear on our way, whether we shut down our feelings, or think less concretely, or something else. The changes around us are always present, constant, shifting, varying, dynamic, time-based, as free choices, possible and imposed. We live in the world of dualities, where everything has an opposite pole, a counterplay, a co-play, a closed circle or cycle, and an interaction with all other dualities. Night and day, the seasons, gender, body parts, thought forms, cause and effect, everything has a duality. But what is the only thing in the world that doesn't have an opposite pole, a contradiction or duality alone? All of the above concepts are part of many advisory techniques and training courses. Understanding all forms of changes requires change ability, which is part of my algorithm and tools, as well as a lot of different calculations in Ancient Academy. Even here on the Camino, there are constantly all kinds of changes, and then back to the Camino with us, with almost 30 kilometers ahead of us. This blog has taken way too long time now, and we are about to walk, so It'll be a buen camino from here. Rasmus continues. Having not moved very far the last few days due to holidays in Spain and thus a lack of hotel rooms, we have now moved 23 kilometers further towards Santiago. We ended up today in the big city of Logrono, which is the capital of La Rioja. We have now definitely moved into the wine country, and the vineyards are everywhere to the right and left. Today's topic is change, which isn't just about the area and surroundings. This also applies to ourselves, and, if any, I know about change and changeability. In other words, the ability to change. Personally, I've moved from a quite ordinary life in a residential neighborhood in Helsingør, over an international career abroad, to being self-employed with several companies. I've experienced business success and also failure. I've gone from a completely superficial life to a life of deep relationships, and from unconscious to conscious in all respects. I've left lifelong friends because we couldn't see things at the same eye level, and the changes I wanted in my life were not compatible with my old circle of friends and their system. I just wanted something different. It's the case with people that we identify with what we know, and not necessarily with what we change into. And if we want the change in our lives to be made, then we also have to choose certain changes ourselves. In all possible ways, I have been through changes. I haven't chosen all the changes myself. Many of them life has chosen for me. But basically, I've experienced that changes, self-chosen or forced, always end up becoming good learnings if you embrace them with open arms. When you bring yourself along and recognize that everything materialistic can pass away, and the only thing that cannot be taken away from you is just yourself, then you are also willing to change and willing to live in this wonderful and changing world that we live in. Man wants to make everything static, but after all, nothing is static, and nature proves it time and again to us. So when will we learn it? Just by walking the 23 kilometers from SANSOL to Logrono, you see it all, and you see how not static and changeable everything is. We landed at a nice hotel that we had booked in advance. Coincidentally, there was a spa area, so the body could rest and recover for a few hours. It was very much needed. After this, we had to choose a restaurant, but as the Spanish people are still lost in their holidays, we had to give up finding an open restaurant. Therefore, we went searching aimlessly. Not only were there public holidays, but apparently there was also an international match going on, so the streets were crowded by party-minded people. That didn't make it easier to find a restaurant. Finally, we took the chance at a place, and this proved not to be a mistake. The evening became the preliminary culinary highlight of the journey. Simple and thoroughly delicious. The wine was a Rioja Reserva from 2005. And yes, even the dessert was heavenly. On top of this, the price was at the very low end. Logrono, yes, thank you. See you again. Buen camino. Natasha continues. 11th and 12th October, Logrono, Nájera. Combined intelligence and combined consciousness. There's noise and commotion everywhere. Even our bodies are noisy and talking in pain. I've never seen so many Spanish people in the streets as over the last few days. Pilgrims who are also stuck due to overbooked albergues, hostels and hotels. Overpricing like I have never seen before, so the breath has gone a bit by many, and the flow everyone moves in on the way has changed. So when Tuesday is over, everyone is looking to more peace. The day started with a meeting with Denmark, and then off to the way where many happy people were in the streets, at the water and in the woods. For us, the turmoil around us suited the topics of conversation the day offered us. anxiety, control, stress, comprehension and capacity, vulnerability, transparency, anger, irritation, and lacking patience. What is likely to complete or consolidate a change or several change processes? What is consciousness? We arrived very tired, and I have missed the peace around me today. Therefore, we've given up going out and are staying inside our very old and used hostel, which is a contrast to yesterday. But the variety is fantastic and pattern-breaking, almost addictive. Again, we hit the topic change. And today, I describe change as a tool to develop our combined intelligence, our combined consciousness. It also helps to phase out the unnecessary parts or the things that no longer benefit us. Change, show your face. Change, a tool for the integration of both people and systems. Change clarifies what we are unconscious of and emphasizes what is in the unconscious. It shows us our blind spots and what we need to develop. Change, it forces us to seek peace inside ourselves, to create peace around us. It shows us our worst sides, which have set in motion certain changes in the first place. All of the above topics also apply to systems. How we deal with the various changes in our lives. It shows our intelligence level. How we land after the various changes. How much ability we have to be aware of what we should learn or have learned from these changes. How we integrate and transform that knowledge into us as wisdom, all showing us the level of our consciousness. Our combined consciousness comprehends the capacity ability our intelligence has, consisting of emotional and operational parts. Therefore, I equate consciousness with intelligence. In short, our consciousness is our ability to comprehend, our comprehension ability, which again relies on our combined intelligence, our understanding ability that helps us navigate with our concrete and not concrete abilities that define our consciousness, like EQ and IQ or DQ, duality quotient. The dualities meet each other, supplement and complement each other, just like our combined intelligence and consciousness. I'd better stop here before I get too started on going in depth with the theory, etc. But put the end with one last thought. To be conscious about the fact that our consciousness and intelligence create a private and working life with ease. After all, we are born in a world built up from the dualities, where opposite poles in an interaction with each other create harmony in and with many forms of changes, and complement each other in the present, in the loop of time. Rasmus continues. You have to get used to the noise when you're in Spain at the time of a public holiday, and you become even more sensitive to any input when you've walked in the mountains by yourself and then suddenly come to a big city like Logrono. There are people everywhere, cars and motorcycles. Change can be difficult. You can work against it or keep up. With age, I have learned that any change, if accepted, can be turned into something positive. Take, for example, a divorce. You may be opposed to getting divorced, but it can result in you no longer being stuck in norms or breaking out of the habits you've built up over many years. Deep down, I am a habitual person and, to some extent, a security addict. But experience has also taught me that the changes you are presented with by the outside world, in other words, those you haven't chosen yourself, can be some of the very best changes you get in life, if you are conscious and live in trust. Confidence that everything will work out, consciousness of the very fact that you are changing, and consciousness of what you have learned in the process and integrated into yourself. If you do not have consciousness about the learning, you have learned nothing at all, and will just be a victim and believe that the change is unfair. Logrono and the way to Nahera is perhaps one of the less exciting places on the route as regards nature. There are many people on the way, a lot of traffic, and the route goes a long way along country roads and highways. On the positive side, there are vines and fields as far as the eye can see, and it almost feels as if every little piece of land is used to put a vine plant on. And if there is anything Natasha and I appreciate, it's a good glass of wine. Even in the most measly and worn-out cafes, the wine is incredibly delicious. Tomorrow the trip goes down to Santo Domingo de la Calzada, which I look forward to. This is, you see, the town I got acquainted with the very first time, some years ago, when I visited Natasha on her first Camino. Now, the Camino is also mine, and I look forward to seeing, feeling, and sensing which stage I am at compared to the first time I was here. Buen Camino. Natasha continues. 12th and 14th of October, Nahera to Santo Domingo de la Calzada. Coincidence ability, the present tense, the loop of time, cause and effect, and energy. Time passes too fast here on the Camino. There is hardly time to just write half a blog. We had a wonderful, wonderful trip here and got a big surprise by coming to a historic and sensory awakening hotel. Already at check-in, we booked an extra day to enjoy ourselves and experience the place. Delicious food and a lot to experience if you go to the historical sites that are here in the city. The conversation on the way started with a question. Do you believe in coincidences? Do you think there is a meaning with everything that happens? Yes and no are my starting points. It's mostly about who creates the coincidence and who experiences it, whether you then call it a coincidence. We were prevented from launching the blog here the other day because someone from the team was prevented from working. It's a coincidence the two of us on the Camino didn't expect. It's not our effect. In other words, we haven't been the cause of that effect. But the person from the team is the cause, and the effect also affects us. We are in the same system, working together, and, whoops, the effect becomes our coincidence. But it is absolutely not the person's coincidence, but an effect derived from another cause in him. Coincidences have an ability, coincidence ability, as they create possibilities and phase out the effect of the present cause and are capable of developing. So the two of us here on the Camino now have a new effect, being the cause why many things change here with us. If we have good change ability, then we shall see the possibilities which this coincidence offers us. Well, yes, it's most annoying that our plan didn't come to fruition, but since we are bound to each other as individual units, we cannot avoid this kind of constant causes and effects in the closed system we find ourselves in, organic or non-organic systems. Just like electricity in a closed energy system, how it is transported, with which power, and how much energy is lost from transformer to terminus, and whether there are other obstacles in the process that control the output. Thus, the energy we humans work in and with has an effect for us, which is not a coincidence for us, but for others. This is because others working with other energies in the same system as us will create a coincidence for us that wasn't included in our system. And if we proceed from the dualities, then the opposite poles are attracted in order to, among other things, create balance in an integration that requires a consciousness which in turn attracts other consciousness, resulting in a meeting of unity, a minus and a plus. Therefore, I love the thought that what you have in your life, you yourself attract. If you have something in your life which doesn't have the same sound as you, then its effect as a coincidence will stop the flow and ease of your life. Consequence of cause and effect. So this is a coincidence for you and creates your development. To me, this doesn't mean that because you have attracted a selfish arsehole, then you are one yourself. On the contrary, maybe you should learn a little bit about healthy egoism and speak up once in a while. And right there, not everyone would like you when you say no to something they want. And yes, then you or we are the arsehole, pardon my French, but I love the freedom of sometimes just calling things what they are. But why should we live in someone else's cause and effect? The next question was, is there a meaning to everything? And here we had a good and heated debate. Poor Wei here, who must provide an ear and platform for all the pilgrim talk, sorrow, anger, emotions that come up in us. This is why the place here is so magical and healing, even if you walk the Camino like us, mixed. I certainly think there is a meaning to everything, otherwise it will not happen, and otherwise it will not survive if the meaning doesn't feed it with energy. Meaning is cause. I believe in energies, and everything is energy. Energy is alive and is the cause of the effect, which again is the cause of the next effect. So yes, what happens has a meaning and a purpose, and thus the effect of a cause, which is the nutrition of the energy of another organic unit, which uses it and has a formula. Otherwise, it'll die, not exist, but perish. That is why changeability is so important, to be able to move with flow, efficiently and without excessive loss of resources or energy, until we achieve the desired output. In order to be able to see the wholeness, to be able to see the purpose or coincidence of our lives, to be able to be a divergent personality, or to comprehend a divergent personality, to be innovative and to come up with the solutions that are sustainable and beneficial to everyone in a system. It requires the ability to sort through the sustainable parts of the learnings of life and take the useful ones with them. To give them a meaning is energy. What we don't need anymore, we must sort off and phase it out as being meaningless. Here, we need to both see, feel, sense, and think with concrete actions. Intuition and instinctive consciousness, combined intelligence. Then it's all tied to each other and all of our effect has a meaning. When we move like the dualities, it depends on with which eyes you look at things and from where you see this, whether it is good or bad. Or maybe it is something that is inappropriate for everyone and needs to be phased out. Something that is not given energy anymore, doesn't have any meaning anymore. It is all up to us. It is our voluntary energy that guides and determines various directions in which everything happens. But can we meet in the middle, in the loop of time, the present tense, where disagreements and opposite poles meet, just like a magnet? Then we are in the process of the coolest consciousness in duality under which we are born. It is where night and day complement each other, and different processes happen in each of their times. But the transition from one to another is so beautiful. Now I've been writing for 2 days and I shall stop here because I can go on, but have you thought about what is the only thing that doesn't have a duality? Speaking of time, the day after our arrival, we happened to pass by a clock museum where everything was about time. What exactly is the probability of that, coincidentally? Rasmus continues. Santo Domingo de la Calzada is one of the cities that epitomizes the Camino. The name comes from the founder, Dominic de la Calzada, who about 1,000 years ago built the bridge in the sky, a hospital and a pilgrim hotel. He also began the construction of the city's impressive cathedral, where he is buried to this day. It's actually quite exciting to come to cities like these, which have so incredibly much history, And speaking of the topic of the day, time, we took the time to visit the cathedral's gigantic church tower and equally gigantic carillons, which kept Natasha awake every half an hour all night. Throughout the day, we had talked about time and timing because the previous days we had been stopped in more or less everything we have done. We couldn't move on due to national holidays. Our credit cards didn't work due to credit maximum, and even data in our telephones were problematic. In short, we were kindly asked to take it easy, to stand still and enjoy the trip, and maybe have an extra look at the work we had done over the last weeks. If there's anything I've learned in recent years, it's that if you encounter too many obstacles, you shouldn't push things through, but wait for the right time. Pushing things through rarely gives the expected result, but if you wait until the right time to implement changes or just follow the next steps in your plan, things will happen almost by themselves. Apparently, it's time for thoughtfulness with us, and since we arrived at a town where, by coincidence, we ended up at a clock museum, it could hardly be more evident. In addition to the historical issue, we live in an absolutely unbelievably nice hotel that, like the town, is simply steeped in history. Again, we had one of those quite unexpected culinary experiences at La Cancella. Should Michelin ever pass by around here, I believe that they would make a remark. Food, wine, and service just came together. The town here was the first one I visited on the Camino about 3 years ago, so I was quite excited to come here again. At the time, I wasn't impressed and was quite harsh in my evaluation of the place. I have to say that my impression is very different today, and this is for me proof of how much I have learned, and how far I have come in my intention not to judge and, so to speak, to look at the dog by the hair. Santo Domingo della Calzada, in the heart of La Rioja, is a nice little town that offers many experiences, whether they are culinary, historical, or touristic. Buen camino. Natasha continues. 14th to 16th of October, Santo Domingo della Calzada to Granon. Unconditional love, uncompromising love, family love, passionate love, sexual love, limit-based love, limitless love, vulnerable love, and the social love, ethics and morals. After a few fantastic and thought-provoking days where we also had to deal with several challenges from home, we are finally on the way again. I'm considering pausing the project to completely relax here and enjoy the tranquility to the fullest and not bring my home here. We shall see. We start the day in the sun and with delicious breakfast at a cafe, as the breakfast at the hotel is way too expensive and not especially delicious. Then comes the first talk of the day, namely sex and sexuality. How we identify ourselves with our sexuality tells a lot about our personal identity. The topic develops further into an even bigger topic, love. We have so many forms of love and we can keep defining them. How many of them are we capable of? And comprehend is quite another talk and is depending on our inner capacity ability. How much or how many of the emotional conditions we are capable of comprehending, transforming, and coping with. There, we need our brain just as much as we need the intelligence of our heart. When we talk about ethics and morals, then I always have a dilemma, as not all my morals and ethical mindsets or attitudes will hold true if we talk about uncompromising love. It's the kind of love I have for my children. If anyone ever wanted to hurt my children, I would look black. I would kill for my children without a thought if I was faced with a choice that involved killing to save my child. I wouldn't even think for a second. Intuitively and instinctively, I would do whatever it took for my children right there. And, funnily enough, my children are the only place where I am vulnerable, and where I understand the concept of anxiety. The anxiety that many others live with and feel in other aspects of life, I've never had, But my children, they activate all kinds of anxiety in me. They've been my greatest way of development, where they are the path of my heart and the labyrinth of my brain. Unconditional love is then just something completely different. This is the kind of love I associate with relationships. It is where we are accepted exactly as we are, and are allowed to evolve and be who we are at the different stages of life, completely dynamic and varying. It is where we learn from life's learnings together, stand together unconditionally, but with our differences, which at times create the greatest chaos, but manage to land on the other side in peace together. It is where the space expands and doesn't narrow, because there are too many expectations, control, unhealthy egoism, etc. in the relationship between the two people, and not simply an acceptance of unconditional love. Love for me is being able to cope unconditionally, being able to understand when required, being able to let go of control when vulnerability threatens or lurks, and having confidence when one's partner is in deep water until they return and stand still. Having the ability to say no in unconditional love is an art, and having patience is the key to that ability. I have experienced many different forms of love throughout life, and for me it has depended on my personal development, who I am, what need I have for a certain kind of love. I love my children uncompromisingly. I love Rasmus unconditionally, and I love my work passionately. And yet I probably have all the other forms of love in all three aspects of my life. I also have an indefinable and vulnerable love within me and around me, which only I alone feel, and which gives me absolute peace and a sense of insight and wisdom and confidence. It's where I can feel and see clearly in a very beautiful way, where doubt doesn't exist, where my survival instincts are not necessary but extinguished, and where I somehow understand magic and the tales of ancient alchemists, where a universe of uncertainty is my driving force as a human being who seeks to understand, prove, feel, evolve, multiply, and survive. Without love and energy, life has no meaning to me, and I am grateful that I am enriched with the greatest forms of love in my life. Because without it, who are we? Rasmus continues. About halfway between Santo Domingo de la Calzada and Granon stands a large cross, marking the end of a war between the two towns. The cross is relatively new, but replaces several older crosses that have stood on the site. The war, which was about disputes around a field, took place over 500 years ago and exists, though without bloodshed, to this day. It made us talk about how people are so strange and stuck in old quarrels that no one can remember the real cause for, just that they disagree. Paradoxically, today's topic is about love and the question, what is love for you? I distinguish between different forms of love, the love of blood ties, the uncompromising love for your children, and the love for your partner. Today, we are talking about the kind of love that for me is trust, affection, respect, connection, deep and spiritual connection, and about, at times, being in deep water when finding new sides, abilities, details, and patterns. Yes, you guessed right, I am talking about here my love for Natasha. I used to think that love is about security, but as I became self-employed, obviously a profession without much security, this changed, and when I got divorced some years ago, I was looking for something completely different in love. Funny, as things change, and the consciousness of the soul can only be seen in retrospect. In Granon, we landed at a small modern design hotel that is just our style. One of those very special hotels run by a married couple, where their own style and energy are clearly evident in everything from menu cards to atmosphere. Casa Grande in Granon gets a great recommendation from here. Buen camino. Natasha continues. 16th and 17th of October 2021, Granon, Balorado. Capacity ability, monodialogue, and coincidence ability. The constant intuitive and instinctive conversation with your inner you and the outside world, the recognition, personal attitudes and thought form, the formation and transformation of knowledge, information and input to one's personal understanding, recognition and consciousness. We managed only 15 kilometers away from our boutique hotel, delicious wine and extremely expensive food, an experience in itself. And I was very quiet inside myself. It was my day to have a mono-dialogue, first with myself so I could express it to others. The walk was rough, not because it was tough, but with harsh surroundings, grey flat ways, cars next to the route, and not too beautiful nature. So now we look forward to appreciating even more when we hit the beautiful nature again. This is how it is with us humans. We often forget the dynamic influence which the present tense has on and for us, and we look forward to something to come which we actually do not know how it will end. It's a conversation in itself. We haven't walked much the last few days, and there have been several things that needed to be put in place both within us and around us. I've had a bit of a hard time having the work with me, and have felt that I would rather just shut off completely here. But now everything was planned and set in motion before we left, and I chose not to listen to my intuitive thought. My brain's need for staying in operation has been more dominant than my heart's need for peace and for being nurtured. You may remember that a few days ago we wrote about coincidences and whether or not there is meaning to everything. There, I was stopped from sending a blog into the world as our partner was overtaken inside by a challenge. And on top of that, our 18-year-old boy got sick and we spent a few days picking up the project and seeing if we could get him here. But he was too sick and hasn't come yet. Rasmus has had a very hard time settling down and not being in a hurry to achieve something, and had to learn just to be. So a lot has happened in the last few days. Yes, now everything is over and we are ready to walk again. However, it'll be in a different way, at least for me. I've made the decision to shut down completely because I can feel that I miss and have a need for just being, for feeling and breathing in the freedom, to cultivate us and put the dots, and shut everything down mentally, also for the new things that are in front of me and us. I choose to activate my coincidence ability and to use it to regain even more peace here. This second phase on the Camino, even deeper, even more peace, even more freedom. It takes time to free ourselves from the volume we are used to at home. The brain must acclimatize and have planted new needs that it cries out for. The heart must have more space to talk to us and show us its need so that we can feel even more, which is also part of our everyday compass. The realization of the walk is that I should listen to the little intuitive thought in the back of my mind that says, remember the present tense and the dynamics of the present, which gives me access to both my emotional and operational capacities. Slow down the brain even more and let it operate less. Let my emotional intelligence speak louder and implement its need in me. Perhaps the realization of what it is in me as a mindset or my attitudes or beliefs that creates my needs have to be changed or else be put on hold so that other things can take their place. I can feel that my combined intelligence is out of balance or needs updating, a transformation of all the experiences, knowledge, and information I have brought with me from the recent time to hopefully a development of my consciousness capacity. In this way, I can more balanced and consciously navigate with my combined intelligence, and all my new experiences transformed and integrated as the intuitive part of me and my inner compass. I need to be more balanced so that I feel more, better, and more easily the needs of my emotions and their language, and can combine them with my operational needs. Our dynamic combined intelligence with balanced, intuitive, and instinctive need. We had lunch at a very cozy auberge. The proprietor made hot scrambled eggs, as well as some freshly made tomato sauce and sandwiches. The experience of being there, with the simplicity of the place, gave peace and was a total contrast to where we came from. We had to decide for ourselves what we wanted to pay, depending on what we thought it was worth. In the evening, we had a simple pilgrimage menu and our red wine that was called Monologue. A coincidence? Rasmus continues. This stretch is the absolute first kilometers I have walked on the Camino almost 4 years ago. At the time, I was a little too optimistic about how fast I would walk, and thus ended up with a hell of a pain the last kilometers towards the city. I was literally completely done when we finally arrived. Being wiser today, the route was no problem, and we arrived at Belorado in good condition without any problems. Our third oldest child had a birthday today, and we managed to get the whole family from all over the world together on FaceTime to sing the birthday song. We walked in the middle of nowhere and had a full signal on the cell phone. The world has indeed become small. It has otherwise been a few days with a bit of panic, also of a technical nature. The website of Ancient Academy has required a bit of attention, which made us stay an extra day in Granon. Nothing that made a big deal, since it was a fantastic, cozy and familial hotel we stayed at. Today's topic again became a mixture of coincidence, meaning, and purpose. Is there a meaning to everything? And if more people are involved in something that happens, does it then make sense for all parties, or maybe only a few? Sometimes you cannot see the meaning of something that happens until a long time after. And since the realization may not be until a long time later, it is often also difficult for me to see or perhaps realize the learning in what has happened. Stopping and being in the present tense is probably one of the hardest things for a modern person at full speed in everyday life, at work, at home, with children, leisure activities, friends, and family. It has taken me several weeks to slow down here on the Camino, and I can still feel the irritation and turmoil when things go too slow. I must actively choose to wind down and be present in the now, forcing myself to stop and keep reminding myself that there is nothing we need to achieve. Day after day, the peace descends upon me more and more. But after a long life with stress and a lot of surface, it does take a long time. Arriving in Belorado, we were again at a small and affordable hostel after some days in slightly better hotels. I like the variety, and as long as I have a clean bed to sleep in, I'm satisfied. The Camino menu, which was quite decent, cost €11 and consisted of a starter, a main course, and a dessert, including water and wine. Then I believe it cannot be made any cheaper. Buen Camino. Natasha continues. 17th and 18th October 2021. Belorado to Villafranca. Wholeness ability, anxiety, the core, inner power, and wholeness. Then we are back where many pilgrims are on the ways. We had breakfast at a small cafe and started walking reasonably fresh. Nature isn't so green anymore. There's been harvesting and autumn has announced its arrival here. But the ways are more beautiful than yesterday. We don't have a very long day, as we would like to stay at a small castle hotel 13 kilometers away. Very beautiful place which has its own alberge, and we meet a lot of pilgrims. The day itself goes without contemplation, with walking and with the coziness around lunch, and the last 4 kilometers with always having to survive the pain. Then we enjoy ourselves in the evening and are totally lovers. Today's topics: anxiety, self-esteem, how we have felt in the different periods of our lives when we have shut down the emotions periodically or throughout our lives, and why was the topic of the day. The day then ends with the question, what is your core? And that part sparked a lot of thoughts in Rasmus and gave me a great realization. The talk yesterday sparked me so much that I woke up with great gratitude today and half asleep thought, I'm 45 doing what I love, have the house I want, the children are where they need to be. I am with my husband where we cultivate and attend to our love for more consciousness of what and where we are together. And we have 2 months off. It's a wild place to be. I don't want to change a thing right now in here. Wow, the dreams of the future tense are there. And we are going to do a lot of things that change everything all the time. But right now and here, everything is as I want it to be, and a great feeling of happiness arises. Anxiety is a strange thing, and no, we're not talking about anxiety as a disease. I've never been familiar with anxiety until my children came in their teens and began to detach themselves from me. Funnily enough, many people around me have always told me that I was afraid of one thing or the other when I started as an entrepreneur, because that is what was widely known within that world. Almost everyone meant something by the fact that I was afraid to go over the ramp and come forward with success, etc. Nothing they said felt right at the time, and over time it has turned out that it wasn't right either. For I have walked across the ramp many times and each time achieved even greater success. People often project themselves onto each other, and the way they see the world isn't always close to the truth we ourselves come from. But their opinion and statements about whether I was afraid to come out with success made me lose myself for a time to someone else's projection of anxiety onto me. And I actually believed what they said. I thought, what if my unconscious was hiding my anxiety and I couldn't feel it, but others could see it? I got away from myself, my core, and what I could feel and knew. I wasn't afraid to come out with success, but I was just there before my time, and the timing was not with me. I, and only I, knew what I was dealing with, working with, and was hiding behind the first concept I tried as a beta product. It was a learning I shall never forget. There are people who do not quite understand the concept and want me to change what I write or work on, so they can understand it. But if everyone would understand what I'm doing, then what is new about it? Where is the innovation in that? Then it's just a message like everything else on the market and among us. Sometimes it's just okay that not everyone understands, as long as we ourselves understand and can stand firm in the core of ourselves. I was not and am not afraid of success or of walking over the ramp, nor have I any fear of failure or swaying me or doing something wrong. I'm a dynamic person who dares, wants, and insists on living life and not letting life live me. And yes, my children are my greatest anxiety and my weak side in life. They are a story in themselves, as they make me a perfect personality, because they put balance to the test. What is your core? Asked Rasmus. Well, that is where there is peace in me, independent of him, the children, and the outside world. It is where I have full acceptance and respect for my own self and my whole me. It is where I acknowledge my mistakes and embrace them, set them up for assessment and take them as a learning. where I feel whole and sense with clear eyes, where the language of emotions and the concrete language speak in a language that I understand. At the core, I feel the love within me, where honesty, integrity, directness, vulnerability are the reasons for my power of action. It seems to me that what stops us from seeing, feeling, and being conscious of the core from which we and our actions emanate is anxiety. The fear of not being good enough, getting enough realization, being accepted and respected by our social networks, family, friends, or norms of society. The fear of not being good enough to be at a certain way in the existing system, or not believing like those who expect you to be part of the wholeness they know or expect you to be. I do not know that much about anxiety, but know many who live and breathe with and in anxiety. Just imagine if we could simply learn to comprehend accommodating ourselves and staying in our core, or bringing ourselves in from the core. Then we would be free from living only by social acceptance and respect. Poor self-esteem and lack of trust are the diseases of our society. The pursuit of happiness, which is bound to achieve a lot in order to believe that you are good enough and show what you can do, results in not many people knowing about the core, happiness, or the peace of love in everyday life, here and now, in present tense. Have you found answers to what it is in our world that doesn't have duality? Rasmus continues. Most of the trip from Belorado to Vila Franca is through the Natura 2000 area. However, I must say that although nature is beautiful, the route itself isn't very exciting. It goes very straight ahead, and long sections of the way are along busy country roads. However, the hotel in Vila Franca is definitely worth a visit, and is one of those hotels that we return to on several occasions. It consists of an old monastery, which has been converted into a hotel. It just oozes history and is located in beautiful hilly surroundings. The subject today is the core of the soul, which is not exactly something I am a 100-meter champion in. I've lived a large part of my life with anxiety to a moderate degree, and have therefore made many basic choices based on anxiety and security, instead of choosing with my heart and emotions. Somewhere in my childhood, I have chosen to shut down my emotions and just follow the mechanical path on autopilot with career, villa, and children in that order. It's only in my 40s that I begin to open up for my emotions again, and this can be extremely difficult when you are missing a good 30 years of practice. So, to the question of what my core is, it starts to get a bit difficult to find the answer just like that, right here and now. There's a need for examining and researching. I can only conclude that I am happy that I have finally again begun to feel and sense. Better late than never, as the saying goes. It's a tough process, and 30 years of walking in the anesthesia of indifference leaves its mark. I am alive, and I am here and now. Buen camino. Natasha continues. 18th and 19th of October, Vila Franca to Burgos. Innovation ability and wholeness ability. 0 point, ground zero, and the loop of time. Back in time. I am missing the words from today's walk. The day was beautiful and more up and down, hence more trees and green colors. But it was a clean-up conversation. The talk about what is your core, still simmering and lurking, resurfaces today. Because why do some people go completely black and lose their pacifier if they face a small challenge or meet something that is not outwardly defined as success? What do they do when their core and inner power are built only on superficial things and their CV, and they lose their job? Why do we lose our family or our jobs? What do we define ourselves by? What do we do when what we define ourselves by isn't owned by ourselves and is suddenly torn away from us? If our drive comes solely from confirmation of what we achieve, from society, our social life and family, etc., then we really have a problem if all of a sudden we choose something else in life that they do not affirm, acknowledge, or approve of. When our drive isn't owned by ourselves but by others, then our self-image is also owned by others, and we don't always know ourselves or our core. If our value depends on what the environment, others at work, or family value, then they own us. Where is our personal freedom in all that, if we are slaves to the recognitions and valuations of others? Others around us become our storyteller and not ourselves. They will be the ones who tell you what you are good at, who you are in what you want to do all the time. And they will act again and again for their confirmations and acknowledgements. Yes, we really need positive social recognition. Anyway, better have deep relationships in which the valuation of who we are and the recognitions they give us aren't based on a superficial relationship than have many insignificant and superficial acknowledgements, which in reality are probably not meant honestly, but more as a social courtesy or simply an acknowledgement. An acknowledgement because we have fulfilled the need of others for them to remain in the self-image they have of themselves or the world around them, giving them power and ownership and living up to their truths and approvals. Those acknowledgements turn on a plate the day you decide to act on your inner power, fulfilling a need you have yourself, and which is independent of their affirmation, recognition, their need, the one which can threaten their reality and what they see as the dominant alpha truth. The problem here is the day you choose to free yourself of their attitude and approval because you want something else, you demote them for the ownership they have had over you, your inner power, and you show independence and power independent of their recognition, approval, or valuation of you. You become your own master and independent of their attitudes and opinions. They don't own you anymore, as they are not to value you or what you've achieved, which they would recognize as an accepted success. But you value yourself for what you think you can do, what the driving force is that emanates from your passion for what you love to be, do, and thus have ownership of yourself for, which gives you an inner freedom and peace, and will no doubt be confirmed by other forms of recognition. The freedom that a human being seeks throughout his life, the self-love which is unconditional. When you have the ownership and valuational power over you and can define your core, which is the driving force and not someone else's, then you will also give the freedom to others around you. They have it until they find their own core, not because they have to live up to you, your expectations, or to fulfill your needs. It's an equal relation. There, the condemnation and the valuation stop. Differences are accepted, and peculiarities are allowed to grow. Entrepreneurs in the field of innovation are known as special types. Not only must they learn to be independent thinkers, responsible for really much and dare to bet with everything they have, where they sell themselves with and together with the product they come with. They're also forced to stand out from the crowd, go up against the flow, stand up for themselves, where only with the independence, ownership, and passion for themselves and the product they can detach themselves from the crowd or society, the boxes, or the family. They can move in the freedom of making mistakes, learning from them, growing, achieving what they believe to be a success for them, and again making mistakes. They'll be able to comprehend that process and never give up, or let others from the outside tell them that they are wrong about it, or their existence, or the value of their product is dependent on the approvals of others, etc. Our innovative inventors or entrepreneurs can see the solution to a challenge in society, or a solution to a future challenge, or they can fulfill a need that others have not yet found the solution to, or simplify a complexity that others do not yet have an answer to. They come with something, an idea, a concept which others don't know, and which the surroundings or the wise people have not yet recognized or have the solution to. They are going to face skepticism, rejection of the unknown, unprovable solutions, or simply due to a lack of results, which shows some kind of experience. Innovation ability is one of the most magical abilities we all have, where human freedom can be achieved on a quite different level, in my opinion. More about this later, and then I think the word is Rasmus's now. Rasmus continues. We left the fantastic hotel in the sunshine and began the ascent to the mountains above Villafranca on the way to Burgos. After the ascent, the way goes more or less straight out through the forest for 12 kilometers without a single house in sight. It's a fantastic route where you have nature close all the way until the outskirts of Burgos. Burgos is a large city with approximately 200,000 inhabitants, and the way in and out of town is long and busy. So it's a great contrast to the scenic area we have just walked through. Today's topic is again the core of the soul and what you contain when you stand naked and without surroundings. And if you ask me, the answer to who I am is not super simple. Looking back at the person I was 4 or 5 years ago, I was primarily a businessman. Most of the focus of my adult life I have spent on my career, and my free time on my hobbies. After I had children, this only gradually changed, and it was only after a layoff and a divorce that I even began to look consciously at which human being I was. My divorce was in every possible way the best thing that could happen to both myself and my children. They got a much more loving and committed father than the person I used to be. And it was the custom of the house at the time for us to look after each other of our own, and emotions were not something that was cultivated. Today, I am a father, husband, man, and businessman in that order. They say that salvation lies in realization, and it is only when you recognize and realize who you are that you can begin to change yourself. If you don't know who you are, how on earth could you change your patterns of behavior? In reality, it's no different for Google Maps. If they don't know where you are, they cannot show you the way. If you ask me today what my core is, I still don't know. I'm still looking and have been looking for it for quite a few years now. All I know is that I am no longer the person I have been, and do not want to be again. There is so much like that, and the Camino is the best place to look in the mirror. Not that it's a great treat. The legs hurt and so does the mirror image. But it is a pure treat for the soul. Buen Camino. Natasha continues. 19th and 20th of October 2021, Burgos de Ornelas. Combined intelligence, combined consciousness, a duality science quotient, digital science quotient, direct science quotient, and domestic science quotient. Ouch! Now I can feel my feet more and more every day. I miss my old boots. Remember, never skimp on your Camino equipment. Woolen clothes, real hiking socks, hiking shoes or boots, a sleeping bag. We only have these few sets of clothes with us for many weeks. According to Rasmus's app, we have walked almost 24 kilometers. According to mine, 20.9. Well, we've actually walked together all the time. This has happened before, and I'd like to know how Apple calculates kilometers. Anyway, it turned out to be a long walk in fantastic summer weather. The talking stick was given to Rasmus, and he was to ask the questions that day. He should ask questions that he has been carrying, about things he has long not understood, or those that will make him more curious in life. It is so in life that if we have been told that we are and are programmed to be one type of person with only one purpose, then we can forget to continuously detach ourselves from the different phases of our human development over the years. Then we can end up losing our curiosity to find the answers that can help change our perspective or vision. Or we can single-mindedly get stuck in a self-image or a time warp that isn't necessary for us. We and our surroundings, families, children, and life processes change all the time. It's the cause of all the different consequences in and around everything. If, for various causes, we get stuck in a thought form, an external shock, unconscious patterns, or a state of feeling, then we end up being judgmental, square, transgressive, destructive in our behavior, or, frankly, some unpleasant personalities who cannot feel themselves and who do not benefit themselves or anyone else. We shall try to adapt the world to what we think is right, and judge what we do not understand or are trained from childhood to see as dangerous, or demean others to be worth less than ourselves. In short, when we lose curiosity about life, we can end up as arrogant people who think we have the answer and the formula for what the real way of life is. Curiosity is part of our development and probably more the key to a healthy and balanced life, where we as humans try to find solutions, understand and use a larger part of our intelligence. To try and understand our concrete side and the non-concrete side, and learn to use them in an interaction for a more balanced and calm life. It's the essence, combined intelligence. If evolutionary theory were to have a version 2 today, then meta-duality theory would be a good supplement, since the strongest link that survives today is not a human being without an understanding of the emotions. The digital intelligence's integration into our everyday lives has freed up some of our time and competencies, which we have used for survival in the past. It's the time for us to be more curious and find the answers to how to become even stronger, to ensure the survival of our species. And there we have only one thing we have not yet mastered, understood, or can navigate completely: our emotions, our other intelligent form, which has until now been overruled and is the cause of many of the large challenges we have worldwide. The word science stands for me as curiosity to find answers to the effects that every cause has. I have defined our existing forms of intelligence such as a duality science quotient, which is our IQ and our EQ, a digital science quotient, a direct science quotient, and a domestic science quotient. We are causes of all existing intelligences. All duality science quotient intelligence forms have a cause and effect that do not become extinct. Why do we think we are the only species going extinct? Even as our children are part of us, then part of us survives again and again. Even if you do not have a child of your own, others in your family have passed on your combined genetic integration to their children. IQ genetics and EQ genetics, which become energetic genetic integration. Whether you believe that we have a soul or not, come back again or not, or whether we just die after our life cycle is finished, then there's no getting around the fact that a part of you never dies out, as we were made to reproduce. Our cells and genetic heritage are passed on to our children, and our basic existence is repeated again and again in the cycle of life. The more we develop as human beings now, the greater the opportunities and basis for further development our subsequent generation has to find more answers, and our core and essence in them are further developed and passed on, and survive. Dying is merely the end of a cycle and a cause of the next effect, since every cause has an effect, and every effect is a new start to the new cause. Every thought or action will have a consequence, and that consequence will be the cause of the next thought or action, and so I can keep going. We humans are here to be curious, learn, understand, and pass on our intelligent mass, and to contribute to development of the system we are part of. Like everything else in nature we were created from, we do not die out, as the past is a part of us in the family, passing on a part of each family's genetic intelligent mass. And yes, when a unit of the family changes drastically and integrates other forms of development, the social genome at the genetic level also changes us, and future generations will change with it. And yes, the day we think we have all the answers, we lose our curiosity and forget to evolve with the system we are part of, and can end up harming us and the systems more than benefiting them. Rasmus continues. The way out of Burgos passes one of the region's largest universities, and the city with its life and energy, in addition to being a tourist magnet, also bears the mark of being a student city. In the center, there's a gigantic and very impressive cathedral, which, unfortunately, we didn't have time to visit. A good tip here is to stay away from the restaurants around the cathedral and instead head a little into town. We left early, around 10 a.m. from the hotel, in glorious sunshine, and on one of the hottest days we've had so far. The temperature is, despite the end of October and just under 1,000 meters altitude, still well over 20 degrees. Today I had the pleasure of asking the questions, and I therefore asked NATASHA about her 3 greatest successes in life. The children came first, which I can attest also applies to me. Our 2 oldest have grown up without a father from the age of 9 to 11, and are now well on their way, both of them. Now, soon, only the last 2 are missing, who are now also on their way to become teenagers. Well, fortunately, they also have a mother on the other side, who can mitigate some of the outbursts of anger and the worst misfortunes that such teenagers can come up with. Back to the second success. Here we find Ancient Academy, which NATASHA as a single mother, through studies, inventions, and self-developed theories, has built up over the past 8 or 9 years. I don't believe that everyone would be able to do anything similar, and I must admit that I am proud and humbled to stand by her side, both as an employee of Ancient Academy and as her husband. The third success is that NATASHA has found herself as a human being. If anyone knows what she consists of, it is herself. At the age of 16, she came here from Persia and left home before she turned 18, so it wasn't exactly in the cards that she would be self-employed with a company that runs consulting and teaching activities, and then even in the field of management and consciousness. Should we not just say that the day was not boring? Nature and the walk neither. The area is a highland plain with wind turbines in their thousands all the way around, so this engineer also has something to look at. Hornillos del Camino is a small village with a handful of albergues. Nothing much happens here besides the Camino walkers who passed by, but the surroundings are beautiful. Buen Camino. NATASHA continues. 21st of October 2021, Hornillos to Casto Heris. LBA, female and male construction management, feminine and masculine management. Once again, absolutely fantastic weather, and the rays of sunshine that surround you on the roads nourish you and welcome you back to the way. Rasmus starts hardcore with questions about Marxism and planned economy, ending with the gender equality challenge. I think other pilgrims rushed past us, as the excitement of the conversation was probably just over the top for their calm state. And yes, now that I'm writing something that can make me the target of many of your opinions. So, if we have moved as sharply away from poverty over the last 30 years as the wise people say, then what happens on a global scale doesn't really make any sense. We look at it from other angles, the blind or hidden angles. I have the opinion that when chaos arrives, changes create unrest, and changes integrate. Then, at least for me, it's about standing still, forming an overview, and seeing what the system that is in the process of change shows me, the pattern it draws. Every change will have a reaction, and each reaction will show errors of what is not working in that system during such change process or chaos. During the corona, what came into play was the gender equality challenge in Denmark. And no, I don't want to make political statements, as I always try to stay far away from that. But I can tell you what I see and experience from my point of view. Whether it's Marxism or planned economy repeating itself, my observations are that I see and experience something else than what many others talk about. If our world has become richer, then there are still most men who are rich and most men who hold high positions still. The imbalance comes to the surface at the moment there is an external disturbance in the existing system, and different entities begin to revise themselves and their positions, their opportunities, situation. From my point of view, Corona was and is many things. An era is changing and has brought with it many good things. We were put on the break bench, and the silence in the streets and the closed workplaces set off a lot of fantastic solutions. Proactivity within the human, in the focus or core, was one of the messages Corona carried with it. Corona created awareness of the vulnerability of life, both in business and private, and pointed fingers at us as if we were small children who were not allowed to play in the same playground anymore. But it also made us aware that because we have grown older and know more, we need to play in other, more mature ways. Corona gave us a time out so that we could update ourselves and the way we live, think, and act. We are moving towards an era where equality and respect for us, nature, and the scientific worlds become the dominant factors. They and we must meet in unity or disagreement, in a wholeness, without condemnation or power struggles as to who is right or knows better. We must work towards neutralizing violations and condemnations that we constantly make against each other or the alien system, whether it is between the different genders, nationalities, faiths, traditions, or mindsets. Corona was also the cause why the dominant emotional factor that dominates people showed itself through people's actions in the form of fear of dying, illness, losing their jobs, etc. The anxiety that in everyday life has characterized us all in a system that doesn't work, and where everyone suffers from various mental disorders, stress, autoimmune diseases, depression, and more. So, yes, if our world is richer than ever before, why do we then have the imbalance that exists and controls everything? I wonder if it is time to recognize each other's strengths as divergent genders and give each other space for equal ownership of both our inner power of differences, business positions, and the economy. Yes, I think it is the time for men to take and give more space to women, where they can contribute with their input. We are created in the dualities for a reason. Women must always and at all times remember not to repeat the same mistakes which we humans have made in the male-dominated world so far. It's not about whether one gender should be the one who takes the lead, the leader, but about the interaction of both in one unity. We are not about to have a female-dominated world, which will also create the greater imbalance existing at present. This applies in private and business life. There is a time for conscious men to take up women's struggle from their point of view and their language, which other men better understand and capture, and thus vice versa with women. Rasmus continues. This is the second day of plateau landscape out of about 6 days. We move at an altitude of approximately 1,000 meters in flat landscape, without trees and with bare fields. There are windmills everywhere, and yesterday it blew half a pelican, a Danish saying. After a few days with just over 20 degrees and high sun, the weather forecast now threatens autumn weather for the next few days, so we enjoy the sun to the fullest and even took a nap in a field during the afternoon. I was honoured with the serve again today, so the question was whether we were moving towards a Marxist society where men and women are equal. A rather topical and interesting topic. Should we not just say that the discussion became lively and that it is not trifles the Camino has to pay attention to? I've now spent a few days trying to find my core, in other words, what I consist of without my house, bank account, CV, etc. And I'm getting closer to the answer. When you know it, it sits in your backbone. It makes many choices in life so much easier, because you always can dive into the box and think about your core, and the choices will then be self-evident. For the first time on this Camino, we fell into conversation with other pilgrims and sat down and ate with them. They turned out to be some cordial and very fresh people in their mid-70s, all of whom were there for a cause. Bridget from California was there to go for her son, who died at 21 years old in a car accident 15 years ago. And Fred from Canada was there to go for his wife, who died of cancer last year. Her last wish had been to come to Santiago, so he brought some of her ashes, which he would scatter on the square in front of the Cathedral of Santiago de Compostela. Adam and Kirsten, also from California, were there to celebrate life and each other. A total of 4 lovely people who were all on a soul walk. Now, however, I think we've had enough company for the next several days and will continue our walk with each other. Buen camino.